Let's continue with the report, and I'm going to create a new section for that as well to make things organized. Let's call it report. So as you may remember, at the beginning we have created a container for report as well. I'm going to call that using with report, and I'm going to define a new subheader, st.subheader, and let's call this as statistics. I'm going to save this, and a new subheader will be added right here, statistics, with a capital S, and save. All right, so as we did for the user inputs, we need to define columns for each card that'll show the details of our stream. So what are the details that we're going to show? We are going to show the number of branches, number of commits made, number of connectors used, and number of contributors to the selected stream. All right, so first let's define our columns. So I'm going to say columns for cards, and the first one will be branch column. Second one will be commit column. I'm going to name this commit col, and connector column, as well as a contributor column. So these will equal to st.columns again. And how many columns do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to say 4. So let's continue with the creation of our first card that will store the branch details. So I'm going to say branch card, and let's add an emoji. So this will be my branch card. So there is a component in Streamlit that allows us to create these kind of metrics quite easily. It's called st.metric. And it expects a couple inputs, as you may see, such as label and a value, etc. We only need these two. So my label will be, for the first one, number of branches, right? And for now, the value for that will equal to, let's say, 5. I'm going to save this. And it created this metric, shows number of branches, 5. Easy peasy, right? So, but the number of branches will be a dynamic value. So the value for number of branches will actually be equal to something else. So let's keep it as 5 for now, and let's see how can we get the number of branches from a stream. So I'm going to say st.write, and let's get the stream details. So I'm going to say st.write stream. As you may remember, we have already created a variable for the stream. So I'm going to say st.write stream, and let's see the details of that. So I have an ID as well as the name, the description, and is public, etc. But there are no methods or attributes, but I think there was one. So I'm going to go to GitHub, and let's search for Speckle Py, Python SDK, and API, resources, and a stream. Okay, so a stream actually returns an ID, name, description is public, created at, etc., as well as a branches. So I'm going to type in stream.branches and save. And in return, I get the stream branches, right? But I need the number of branches, and there's actually a method or attribute called total count. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply type in total count and save. So now in return, I get the number. So we have converted a static value into a dynamic one. So my value will equal to this actually. So I'm going to copy this. delete 5 and paste it right here and save. And just like that, now the number of branches is equal to 2. So if I change my stream to Revit to SketchUp, for instance, this one has only 1 branch. How do I know? Because I get all the branches from the stream and I get their total count. Okay, great. So we have created our first card. So let me delete this and let's create another card, this time for commits. So I'm gonna say commit card, copy and paste. And let's add another metric. I'm gonna type in st.metric, right? And then our label this time, label will equal to number of commits, and the value for that will equal to, let's say, 5 again. I'm gonna save. And I think we have a problem because I thought we have created a column for each card. But as you may remember from the input thing, since we haven't defined the columns at the beginning of the metric, it doesn't know where to place it. So I need to define that. So for the branch card, I need to add that card into the branch column. So I'm going to say branch column dot metric. Do the same thing for commits as well. So I'm going to say commit column dot metric. So if I save it now, since we have defined those columns beforehand, now they're going to be placed side by side. So we have created these commit as well. Let's make this one as dynamic too. So we already know the commits are stored in the commits variable. So the value for that will be actually the length of that list. So I'm simply going to type in len to get the length of the list, and the list will be the commits list. Let's save it. So I have 3 inputs. Let's change this to Rhino to BIM. And now it has 12 commits. By the way, if you're seeing 10 and you are sure that you have more than 10 commits, it is because the commits has a limit. You have to define it. So we have created the branches cards, we have created the commits cards. Let's continue with our connectors. So I'm going to do the same thing and create a connector card. This will be a card as well. And I am going to call this time, so let's say connector column.metric. Do the same thing. Its label will be number of connectors and the value will be, I don't know, maybe 5. Let's say 5. Save it. So somehow I need to get the number of the connectors from the list. So how do I do that actually? So let's come back to the Speckle Pie GitHub. So I'm going to come back, Speckle Pie API resources and commit. So for each commit, I have couple properties such as ID, message, reference to object, etc. And then there is a one called source application. So let's get that. So I'm going to type in st.write. We're going to write for C in commits. So for each commit, let's get their C.source application parameter. I'm going to save this, come back to my page, and just like that, we have got all the connectors for each commit. But now they are actually repeating themselves. So first, let's create a new variable that will store all the connectors. I'm going to say connector list. So this one will be my connector list. Let me copy this from here and paste it. So now we have created a new variable that will store all the connectors. and I need to get somehow number of connectors from this list, and it's actually quite easy. So let's try the length of this list. So I'm going to say len.connector list. Right, so I'm going to click on save. So now number of connectors is equal to number of commits, because the len method doesn't actually return the unique values from this list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from dict.from keys, and let's get this in a parentheses and save. And just like that, now we have all the unique values from this list. So we got the length of the unique values from this dictionary. Okay, great. So let's delete this guy as well. And let's continue with our last card that'll show contributors. So I'm going to copy again. And this one will be contributor card. And let's do the same thing, contributor column.metric. Its label will be number of contributors, and the value will be, let's say 5 for now. I'm gonna do the same thing, and let's see how do we get the number of contributors from a stream. So I'm gonna come back to the GitHub again. This time I'm gonna take a look at a stream. And right here, stream object actually returns a collaborators as well. So I'm going to type in st.write stream.collaborators, save, and come back to my application. And number of collaborators are listed right here. So the value for this card will be actually the length of this list. So I'm going to simply say len parentheses stream.collaborators in parentheses and save it. And just like that, number of contributors is equal to 3. So great, now we have created the cards, added the values 2, 12, 3, 3, and they're working just fine. So let's check with another stream, Revit to SketchUp. So now the number of branches is 1, number of comments is 3, number of connectors is 2, and contributors is 1. Oh, right, so it is working. We are quite sure about that. So I'm going to save this guy. So we have created the numbers. Let's add the details as well. So for instance, I'm going to go back to Rhino to BIM. So I know that this stream has 2 branches. I want to see their name. For connectors, I want to see the connector names. And for contributors, I want to see the contributor names as well. So how do we do that? I'm actually going to create a new function for that as well that will create a list. So first, let's see how do we create a list in Streamlit. So we're going to say st.write, right? So I'm going to create a markdown, and I'm going to say the first one will be my main branch, and the second one I know that is along test branch. So I'm going to save this. And this is actually how it looks like. So this is how we create unordered list kind of thing. So, but how do we do that for the branches? Let me show you how it's done. So I'm going to come back to my branch column. Okay. So list of branches. So I'm going to type in st.branches, right? So this is where the branches are stored. Streamlit, oh, sorry. I was going to say st.write, then write branches. I'm gonna save. Okay, so these are my branches, and each branch has an attribute called name. So I'm gonna say st.write for b in branches. Let's get their name, b.name. I think this should be like it. So now we have the Megan as well as the Alan. So I'm going to create a function that will convert this list into a markdown kind of list. So let's do that. So list, Python list to markdown list. I'm going to say, and the function for that will be actually something like this. So this one accepts a list and a column. So list equals to this dash, and then we are inputting the item from the list. And at the end, I am adding a slash and an and to get to create a new line. And then I am joining this list and returning it as a markdown. All right, so let's call this function right below our branch. So I'm gonna say list to markdown. My list will be my branch names, which is gonna be for b in branches. Let's get their name using b.name. So this is my list, and the column for that will be my branch column. So let's save. Now the details of this branch is shown in this column. Great, let's do the same thing for connectors as well as for contributors. So I'm gonna do the same thing for the connectors as well. Connectors list. So this will be list to markdown. Oops, sorry. List to markdown. And I'm gonna create a new variable called connector names, and then it's gonna be added to connector column. So let's define our connector names. Connector names will be stored in this variable, connector names. It's going to be equal to the list of dictionary from keys. We're doing the same thing, but instead of using the len function, we're using list. And let's get the unique values from connector list. I'm going to save this. Now all the unique values from the connector list is shown in this list. Great, let's do the same thing for the contributors. So I'm going to say contributor name. It's going to be stored in this variable, contributor names. It's going to be equal to list dict.from keys, doing the same thing again, but this time we are getting all the collaborators in for collaborator in stream.collaborators. So for collaborator in stream.collaborators get their name, column call.name, and it's going to be in a list. Let's save it again. Okay, so contributor names are stored in this variable. We're going to convert this into a list again. So contributor list to markdown. Our names will be this guy, and the column will be contributor column. And just like that. So what we have done is we have created a function that converts a Python list into a markdown list, and then we get all the unique values from number of branches, number of connectors, as well as number of contributors. Okay, so this was it for the statistics In the next part, we're going to create the graphs.